Chosen ones, listen closely. This 1,200-year-old manuscript explains the first 7 days after death. This is not just a story. It's a resurrection of memory, a pulling back of the curtain that time tried to seal. There exists an ancient manuscript, over 1,200 years old, hidden from the mainstream, whispered about in the corners of monasteries, enchanted in dim candlelight by monks who never dared speak its truths aloud outside sacred walls. A manuscript that explains what happens, not in theory, but in spiritual certainty, in cosmic rhythm, in vibrational sequence, in the first 7 days after the human spirit departs from its body. What it says will disturb you. What it reveals will awaken you. What it carries is not just information, it is soul memory. It is something you once knew before birth, and now you are about to remember it again. The moment of death is not the end. It is a beginning. It is not a vanishing. It is a passage. You, the eternal observer, the witness within the flesh, will feel the release before the body even realizes it is gone. And on that first day, the soul hovers. It lingers above the body, watching in stillness. There is no pain, only an overwhelming silence. Time no longer ticks, it stretches. Sound changes. Light becomes alive. And you, the soul, begin to feel everything around you with no filter. You feel the thoughts of the living. You hear the weeping of loved ones, not just their cries, but the energy behind the sorrow. You sense every unspoken word, every regret, every hidden forgiveness. The body is still there, but you are not it anymore. The separation begins, and the soul experiences its first echo of freedom, but also its first moment of disbelief. On the second day, confusion sets in for those who have not prepared. The soul, having left the body but still bound by earthly attachments, begins to drift. It is drawn to places it once loved, its home, its children, its lover's scent on a pillow, the corners of the room where it used to dream. It sees everything, but it cannot interact. The manuscript describes this phase as the echoing, where the soul hears life continue without it. For many, this is the most painful part, not because they are gone, but because they realize how little they truly lived. They realize how often they postponed joy, how often they swallowed their truth, how many times they betrayed their own intuition just to be accepted. And now they are witnessing the life they left behind, and they feel the weight of their own silence. The third day begins the reckoning. The manuscript refers to this as the river of mirrors. This is not a place, it is an experience. The soul is taken inward, not by force, but by vibration. It begins to relive its life, not through memory, but through energetic imprint. Every word spoken, every action taken, every intention carried within is replayed through the eyes of those it affected. The soul feels how it made others feel. Every moment of love creates a warmth that embraces the soul. Every moment of harm causes the soul to tremble in its own energetic imbalance. But there is no judgment, only awareness. The manuscript says the soul is not punished by a god, but by its own level of consciousness. It is here that many begin to weep, not with regret, but with reverence. For now they understand how sacred every second was. By the fourth day, the soul is met with the voices. These are not hallucinations or visions. They are the spiritual guides, ancestors, and protectors who have walked with the soul unseen throughout its lifetime. They do not appear as figures unless the soul is still bound by form. They appear as feeling, frequency, and ancient recognition. They speak not in language but in knowing. They remind the soul of its mission, its purpose, its contract. For some it is a reunion. For others it is a moment of reckoning. Did you fulfill your assignment? Did you share the light you were given? Did you live your name, your soul print, your divine signature? And if not, why? There is no shame, only clarity. The manuscript says this is when the soul begins to remember who it truly is. Not the role it played on earth, but the being it has always been. On the fifth day, the journey begins inward. The manuscript calls this the corridor of sound. Here, the soul travels through layers of frequencies. Each layer is a dimension. Each dimension is a reflection of consciousness. The more aligned the soul was with truth, love, and awareness while on earth, the easier this passage becomes. But for those burdened with unresolved grief, hatred, or deep attachment, this corridor becomes a labyrinth. Sound becomes distorted. The soul may hear screams that come from its own guilt, or laughter from moments it forgot, or silence so vast it becomes unbearable. This is the purification, the alchemical fire. The soul must face itself in pure frequency. It cannot lie. It cannot hide. It must be sound enough to pass through sound. The manuscript warns that this phase is often the point where souls get stuck in lower planes, not out of punishment, but because they cannot match the vibration needed to ascend. And yet, for those who move forward, the sixth day brings the great remembering. This is when the veil fully lifts. The soul sees all its lifetimes, not in a flash, but in full multidimensional presence. It sees the patterns, the reincarnations, the karma, the contracts made in spirit, the love stories that span centuries. The manuscript calls this the blooming of the lotus. The soul understands why it chose the parents it had, the pain it endured, the heartbreaks it faced. It sees the purpose behind the suffering. It weeps again, but this time with awe, because now all the questions have answers. All the confusion turns to clarity. All the pain makes sense. The soul sees that everything was designed to bring it back to this moment of remembrance. Nothing was random. Every encounter, every loss, every miracle, it was all orchestrated by the soul itself to remember its own divinity. On the seventh day, the decision is made. Some souls are invited to ascend. Others choose to return, and some remain in the in-between, still attached, still learning, still healing. The manuscript says the choice is always made in love. If the soul is not ready, it will be reborn. If the soul has completed its cycle, it moves on. If the soul feels it must stay and guide others, it becomes a guardian. But all are embraced. None are cast out. There is no hell, only separation. There is no heaven, only remembrance. The highest realm is not a place. It is a state of being, a frequency where the soul is fully awake, fully sovereign, fully luminous. And so the manuscript closes not with fear, but with empowerment. It says to the living, do not wait until death to awaken. Live now as the soul you are. Speak the truth now. Heal now. Love now. Release the attachments now. Because when death comes, it does not give you a new self. It shows you who you've always been. The first 7 days after death are not meant to scare you. They are meant to prepare you. And if you are hearing this message, it is because your soul is ready. Ready to remember. Ready to rise. Ready to live beyond the illusion. And as the manuscript's ink begins to fade beneath the weight of time, its message only grows louder for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. It is not the living who understand death. It is the dying who understand life. The soul, now having passed through the 7-day corridor, becomes fully aware that the body was merely a costume, an avatar, a temporary garment to carry out a divine mission cloaked in flesh. What we called suffering was often the soul screaming through silence, asking us to wake up. What we called failure was the soul recalibrating us back toward alignment. What we called coincidence was the whisper of our own higher self rerouting us toward purpose. Many who return from this journey speak of a great light, but the manuscript clarifies, it is not a light outside you. It is the light within you being reflected everywhere. That light is your true self, the same light that sparked creation, the same light that the ancient mystics called the breath of the all. And in that state, the soul understands that death was never the opposite of life. It was the opposite of birth. Life is eternal. Life is what you were before you entered this world, and life is what you return to when you leave it. But why is this knowledge hidden? Why is this manuscript locked away in temples and buried in tombs? Because a soul that remembers cannot be ruled. A soul that knows what happens after death begins to fear nothing, and a being who fears nothing becomes uncontrollable, becomes divine, becomes awakened. The manuscript was not meant to haunt you with fear, but to haunt the illusion with your awakening. Because once you remember, you can no longer be manipulated. You do not chase material validation. You do not sell your soul for social acceptance. You do not cower before systems built on lies. You live as a sovereign frequency, and your very presence begins to crack the walls of the matrix. It is written in the margins of the manuscript, scrawled by the hand of a monk who refused to be erased. The greatest death is the death of forgetfulness, but the greatest resurrection is remembrance. And so, what are you doing with your now? That's the question every soul must answer before the first day after death. Are you living or are you surviving? Are you speaking truth or are you repeating scripts? Are you embracing your role or avoiding your responsibility to the light within? Because now you know, now you remember, now the veil has been pierced, not with dogma, but with depth. The 7 days after death are not a myth. They are a spiritual sequence encoded into your DNA. That's why your chest tightens when you hear this truth. That's why your spirit responds. That's why the hair on your arm stands as if it recognizes this message. Because it does. Your cells are ancient. Your memory is eternal. Your soul knows this is not a story, it's a reactivation. And there is more, so much more. Then let us walk further into the sacred remembrance, into the truths that the world buried beneath concrete, beneath doctrine, beneath fear. After the 7th day, when the soul has made its choice, whether to ascend, to return, or to remain, it enters what the manuscript refers to as the great stillness. This is not silence. It is the vibrational pause before transformation. Imagine a note so pure it doesn't move, it simply is. A frequency so stable it doesn't need to sing because it has already become the song. In this place, the soul is no longer seeking, it is observing, expanding, dissolving into the fabric of Source without losing its identity, only its attachment. And yet, not all souls choose stillness. Some are drawn back by love, by unfinished work, by a promise. The manuscript speaks of the returners, souls who carry sacred codes, the seeds of divine memory, and they choose to come back not for karmic repetition, but for restoration. These are the ones you see in your dreams, the ones who show up in your life as light, who speak in riddles, who seem ancient even in a young body. You may be one of them. If this message reaches you and it vibrates through your spine like a forgotten chant, that is not coincidence. It is spiritual recognition. The returners are not here to be worshipped. They are here to remind others that they are gods forgetting their godhood. The manuscript warns, the more deeply the soul sleeps, the harder it is to awaken. Not because the truth becomes harder to find, but because the soul begins to mistake the illusion for reality. And so the cycle continues, birth after birth, death after death, until something breaks the cycle, until a word, a sound, a pain, a kiss, a crisis, something triggers the remembering. And from that crack in the illusion, the soul begins again. It's a spiral, not a line. It's not up or down, it's inward. But what happens to the ones who get lost between realms? The manuscript doesn't avoid this. It calls them the wanderers. These are souls who died with such heavy attachments, such sudden trauma, or such fear that they remain suspended between worlds. Not out of punishment, but because their vibration hasn't completed its release. They haunt not because they want to, but because they don't know they've left. The manuscript gives an ancient ritual for releasing them, not through exorcism, but through remembrance. Speak their name, light a candle, offer them the words they never got to say, finish the song they were afraid to sing, honor them, because remembrance is the bridge. It also says this, no soul is ever truly lost. Even the most fragmented soul can be restored. Even the most tormented spirit will, in time, find the thread. The universe does not discard what it has created. It weaves it back in again and again until the pattern becomes whole. That is why your pain matters. That is why your healing matters. Every wound you carry, if transmuted, becomes medicine not just for you, but for all your soul versions across time. Your healing echoes. Your liberation frees others. The dead are not gone. They are listening, watching, waiting. And when you awaken, it sends shock waves across dimensions. There is a final page in the manuscript, fragile, faded, nearly erased, but it holds the most powerful truth. It says, what dies is the memory of who you thought you were. What rises is the truth of who you've always been. You were never the role, never the job, never the trauma. You were always the witness, the spark, the current, the God seed. Death only strips away what is false. What remains is real, indestructible, unnameable. And when you truly understand that, you no longer fear death. You no longer cling to things that fade. You begin to live with reverence. You love differently. You listen more. You speak with intention. You honor every moment as sacred because now you know what comes after. And you realize you were never meant to survive life. You were meant to awaken through it. And so here you are, in the in-between, alive but remembering death, breathing, but aware now that you are more than lungs, more than blood, more than a heartbeat. You are the awareness behind the breath, the silence beneath the thoughts, the light behind the eyes. You are the one who will one day leave this body not in fear, but in flight. And when that day comes, you will not tremble. You will not beg. You will not cling to this world like it is your home. Because now you know it was only ever a classroom, a sacred theater where your soul came to play out its myth, forget itself, and find its way back home again. You will remember that you chose this life, that you chose every lesson, every loss, every joy, every betrayal, and you will see that all of it, every moment of confusion and clarity, was a necessary note in your soul's great symphony. And when you stand at the threshold between this world and the next, you will not ask, "What happens now?" You will whisper, "I remember." And that remembrance will be your passport. That remembrance will be your light. That remembrance will carry you. You will float. You will observe. You will feel every vibration of the people who cried for you, laughed for you, judged you, adored you. You will see them not as enemies or allies, but as mirrors. You will know who they were to you in past lives. You will know why they crossed your path. You will see the sacred contract in every connection, and you will forgive, not for them, but because forgiveness is the lightest energy to travel with when leaving a world behind. And when you cross the seventh gate, when you step fully into the remembrance of who you are beyond the veil, you will not feel lost. You will feel seen, welcomed, absorbed into a vast, infinite presence that has no name, no beginning, no end, only love, only awareness, only home. The manuscript says the most haunting part of the first 7 days is not death itself, but how few souls ever lived. And that is the message you are left with, not to fear death, but to fear a life unlived, a truth unspoken, a purpose ignored, because now you know there is no hiding after the final breath. There is only the raw truth of who you were and who you were meant to become. So live with fire in your chest and stillness in your heart. Live like you've already died and come back to do it right. Live with reverence, with magic, with wild, sacred defiance of the illusions. Heal what you can. Love who you must. Speak what you've buried. And when your final 7 days come, let them be a reflection of a soul that remembered in time. Let them say, "Here was a being who truly lived." Subscribe to Spirit Vibes Tick channel for more awakening messages and knowledge.